They're coming for you.
My family's there.
How many people are there? Your dad? Who else is there?
My dad, my uncle, my cousins.
August 29th, 2009. New Hope Mobile Home Park, Brunswick, Georgia. A pale sun was rising over the scattered trailers and dusty driveways of Lot 147, where silence hung strangely heavy. Inside the small, overstuffed mobile home, 8 people, spanning 3 generations, lay murdered. There was no gunfire. No cries. Just a smothered horror that had passed quietly in the night, leaving nothing behind but blood, broken bodies, and a single, inexplicable survivor, a toddler, barely breathing, cradled in the shadow of carnage. At 8:15 a.m., the Glynn County dispatch line lit up. A panicked voice, young, shaking, on the verge of tears, rushed out over the receiver. "They're all dead. My whole family's dead. Somebody killed my whole family." That voice belonged to 23-year-old Guy Heinze Jr. He stood outside the mobile home, shirtless, barefoot, hands streaked with sweat, not blood, when the first officer arrived. His words tumbled out in disbelief. "Someone's killed them all, my dad, my brother, everyone." What police found inside would haunt them for the rest of their careers. 8 bodies, men, women, and children, beaten to death. No forced entry. No screams reported. The home was trashed, but not looted. Amid the bloody wreckage, a broken rifle stock lay near one victim's body. It wasn't a murder. It was a massacre. The victims were members of the Toller family, with whom Guy Heinze Jr. had lived for most of his life. They weren't his blood relatives, but they were family just the same. He called Russell Toller Sr. his dad. It was Russell who had taken Guy in when his biological father drifted out of his life. Russell provided a roof, rules, and routine, however fragile. Guy's older stepbrother, Michael Toller, was severely mentally disabled. Heinze was often tasked with helping care for him. Michael was quiet, harmless, and entirely dependent. Also in the trailer that night, Chrissy Toller, Russell's adult daughter, Joe West, Chrissy's boyfriend, Chrissy's 2 young children, and 2 more small children, nieces and nephews from within the extended Toller family. Altogether, 9 people were packed into the cramped double-wide that summer night. Only one would live. 3-year-old Byron Jimerson, believed to be related to Chrissy or another member of the household, was discovered alive but barely conscious, his head crushed in the attack. He was airlifted to a nearby hospital, fighting for life. Everywhere else, there was death. Initially, police treated Guy Heinze Jr. as a horrified relative, not a suspect. He told officers he had spent the night away and returned to find the grisly scene. But almost immediately, something didn't add up. He said he'd tried to revive his family members, touched their necks to check for pulses, yet there wasn't a trace of blood on him. His clothes were clean. His demeanor wavered between grief and odd detachment. Most notably, instead of calling 911 right away, he had called other relatives first. It didn't make sense. Investigators cordoned off the trailer and began the brutal work of documenting the dead. Each victim showed signs of severe blunt force trauma, consistent with beatings from a household object. The stock of a shotgun or rifle. Many had been struck multiple times, on the head, chest, limbs. Some showed no defensive wounds at all, suggesting they were attacked in their sleep. It wasn't fast. It wasn't impulsive. It was deliberate. A family had been annihilated in the dark, and the only person left standing was the man who claimed to love them. Still, the investigation moved cautiously. Heinze was taken in for questioning but not arrested for the murders. Not yet. Officers found painkillers in his pocket, illegal possession, so they booked him on that while the forensic team worked the scene. But it was clear to everyone involved, they weren't holding him for drugs. Within days, the Glynn County Sheriff's Office obtained the results they needed. Blood was found on Heinze's clothing, on his shoes, on the back of his cell phone. Not just trace amounts, impact spatter, projected during the forceful beating of human bodies. Heinze said he must have gotten it on him while checking on the victims. But forensic analysis revealed that the blood was fresh at the time of contact, before coagulation. The kind of transfer that happens not from touching a dead body, but from standing close during the violence. And the weapon? The broken stock of a rifle belonged to a gun that was already in the house. It hadn't been brought in. It had been used, as if its original purpose didn't matter. What mattered was the destruction. Heinze was officially charged on September 2, 2009, just 4 days after the murders, with 8 counts of first-degree murder. The media dubbed it the worst mass killing in Glynn County's history. And the fact that the suspect was a member of the family made it all the more chilling. People wanted to understand what could lead a man to kill the very people who had raised him, loved him, given him a place when the rest of the world had turned away. But that answer wasn't coming yet. All that remained were questions, and a blood-soaked trailer that held far more than grief. It held rage, secrets, and silence. In the days following the massacre, Brunswick, Georgia, normally quiet, coastal, and slow-moving, fell under a blanket of collective mourning and tension. The word murder had always felt distant to many in this part of the state. Now it had arrived at their doorstep. And it had come from within. News trucks lined the edge of the New Hope mobile home park. The air still carried the smell of bleach and blood. Inside the Glynn County Detention Center, Guy Heinze Jr. sat behind a glass partition. No more crying. No more shock. Just silence and eyes that refused to meet the lens of the camera. The question remained, why? The state's case came together quickly. The evidence was damning, not just in quantity, but in nature. Bloodstains were found in Heinze's car. Some belonged to the victims. Some had pooled on the doorframe, consistent with someone loading or removing a body or an object smeared in blood. His shoes bore microscopic blood spatter, evidence that could only come from proximity during a violent act. But perhaps most chilling of all was what investigators didn't find. No sign of forced entry, no unknown fingerprints, no foreign DNA. No one else had been in that trailer. And the supposed motive? It was small, almost pathetically small, but real. Heinze was angry. Tensions in the home had been rising for weeks. He was clashing with his dad, Russell Toller Sr., over finances, drugs, and responsibilities. He had reportedly wanted to move his girlfriend and child into the trailer. Russell had said no. Then there was the crack cocaine. Heinze had relapsed, and some believed he was on a bender the night of the murders. He needed money. A fight broke out over stolen prescription pills, according to later statements. The theory the prosecution would later argue was simple. A moment of fury escalated into total annihilation. A drug-fueled rage that couldn't be walked back. Once the first blow was struck, the rest became a chain reaction. No witnesses. No loose ends. Just silence. But Heinze maintained his innocence. In every interview, he told the same story. He returned home that morning after spending the night elsewhere. He walked into a nightmare. He panicked. He checked pulses, made calls, tried to help, but couldn't. When asked why he hadn't dialed 911 immediately, his response was inconsistent. At first, he said he froze. Later, he claimed he didn't have a phone. Police later discovered he had made multiple calls before contacting authorities, including to other relatives. His affect wavered, sometimes inconsolable, sometimes blank. Grief or guilt? Shock or calculation? The line was too fine to read. But the court would soon be asked to decide. In 2013, after nearly 4 years of legal delays, jury selection began for the most high-profile murder trial Glynn County had ever seen. Guy Heinze Jr. faced 8 counts of malice murder, 1 count of attempted murder, and the possibility of the death penalty. The defense painted him as a scapegoat. They argued the scene had been contaminated, the timeline uncertain, and the evidence circumstantial. They pointed to a lack of fingerprints on the murder weapon, the broken shotgun stock, and suggested an unknown assailant could have entered the home through an unlocked door. But the prosecution pushed back. They emphasized the forensic timeline, the blood spatter, the inconsistencies in Heinze's story, and the sheer brutality of the crime. No random killer would spend the time, or take the risk, to eliminate an entire family in such a calculated, personal way. This was not the work of a stranger, they argued. This was the work of someone who knew where people slept. Someone who moved room to room in silence. Someone fueled by rage and control. As the trial unfolded, jurors saw crime scene photos, bloody mattresses, overturned furniture, victims with heads crushed beyond recognition. The most disturbing evidence came from the surviving toddler, Byron Jimerson, who had suffered critical head trauma. Doctors said it was a miracle he lived. A child had looked into the eyes of his family's killer and survived. And he would live the rest of his life bearing that scar. Midway through the trial, something unexpected happened. Heinze's defense team approached prosecutors and offered a plea deal. In exchange for removing the death penalty, Heinze would plead guilty to 8 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. In October 2013, he stood before the court and said the words, "I'm guilty. I did it." There was no breakdown. No sobbing. Just a flat voice, stating what everyone already knew. That a young man, just 23 years old, had bludgeoned his entire family to death in a single night of controlled violence. He was sentenced to multiple life terms without the possibility of parole. The courtroom was silent. Family members wept. Some cursed. Others just sat numb, staring into the space where a loved one should have been. For many, justice came without closure. There were still no clear answers. No why that made sense. How could a man raised by this family, who called Russell Toller his dad, who helped care for Michael, who played with the kids, wipe them all out? Was it the drugs? The stress? A snapped mind? Or had the seeds of destruction been planted long before that night? Neighbors would later recall seeing signs, rage, sudden outbursts, disturbing things muttered under breath. But no one imagined this. No one imagined a massacre inside a trailer full of children. But in the end, the story of the Glynn County murders is not just about the killer. It's about the victims. About Michael, who never spoke much, who loved music and needed help just to eat. About Chrissy, who worked double shifts and smiled in every photo. About the kids, Jarkis, Michelle, Joseph Jr., each under the age of 6. Who never even knew what was coming. About a family who had little, but held tightly to each other. And about what it means to lose everything, not to a stranger, but to someone who called you family. The quiet trailer park in Glynn County has long since faded from the headlines. But behind every silence is an echo, and behind every murder is a family broken forever. In the end, justice came, not clean, not complete, but final. And yet, we're still left with the questions. What breaks a person beyond repair? And how close are we all to becoming something unrecognizable? This was the Glynn County Massacre. You've been watching True Crimes Now, where we bring the darkest truths into the light. If this story gripped you, share it. Comment below with your thoughts. And subscribe for more deep dive true crime stories that refuse to look away. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware.